Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, before we get into your work, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic changed so many things for all of us. How did you get through that era, that pandemic era, and how has it affected the way that you work and do things today?
Actually, it really worked out for me. I had a fitness studio in Nashville, Tennessee for 8 years. I sold it, and actually, it was totally intuitive. I sold it in 2018. And about 2017, I started feeling this urge to kind of leave and change. And in 2018, I sold it and relocated to Europe. And then 2019 is when I started my online coaching, which was also the natural progression of what I did because fitness is just one aspect of our overall health. And when 2020 hit, I thought, okay, well, this is a big deal. My kid is small. I don't know what's going on. But then after a few weeks, after maybe a couple months, it just like worked itself out. So it really worked well for my business because the nature of what I do is I help people in kind of situations like that, unpredictable, scary, high stress situations.
So, let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, kids always get the truth out of us. I'm going to put you in front of 12-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I help people live a better life. Simple
So,
as that.
so what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
That's an excellent question. So I lived in the US since the age of 16, but before that, I grew up and was raised in Eastern Europe. And that question is very interesting because it generally works for people, for children who were exposed to many different things. But I only knew what I knew. So when I was 12, I only had my surroundings to go off of. I didn't know I could change the world. I didn't know I can be a coach. I didn't know I can just speak with people and that's my strength. So when people ask me that question, I only remember I wanted to play, which is funny because I have a 6 year old who just wants to play.
Yeah.
And I didn't like school. I didn't like any discipline. I just wanted to play. And I remember back when I had the fitness studio, I remember thinking that I thought, I'm kind of playing. I got to do what I love. And now it's just a different stage of it, but I feel that it's the same thing. This is kind of play for me, playtime.
So, talk to me about the foundational elements of you being a coach and helping people get to a better place. What were the seeds that were planted early on that eventually evolved into this work for you?
Such a great question. So again, had the fitness studio, and that way that started is I started going to the gym, I started feeling great, and I thought everybody needs to know this. So I started being a trainer, loved helping people, loved my playtime. Then I said, okay, we definitely need to talk about nutrition. So I started adding the nutrition aspect of it, and then started helping people more. But then there was always people who didn't change, and I thought, okay, well, what's the missing piece here? So let's talk about mindset. In that same time, I started meditations on my own. I started doing the inner work and I still didn't fully understand it, but I went with it, went along with it. Fast forward, opened my fitness studio, introduced all of that there. So while we trained and talked about nutrition, we also did meditations after stretching, we did visualizations. I started introducing more of that. And it was still okay. Now, some more people are changing permanently. But what I really didn't like is if people can't train with me for whatever reason, and then 6 months later they contact me back and they go, I gained all the way back, or whatever the issue was, right? And I thought, what? We did all the work. Why is this not a permanent shift? That, including my own life and feeling stuck in certain areas of my life, I started inspecting that and going deeper and researching that. Okay, it's not the workouts, it's not the nutrition, it's not just the meditation, it's not just the, what is it? And that totally led me to nervous system work, which is again the huge transformation I went through. So when I experienced it and my life changed, for one, all the work I did up front on meditations and visualizations and learning quantum physics actually made sense in that very moment, but my life completely transformed. And that's when it was just so crystal clear to me. I needed to go through all of that to get to where I am. And I believe that all of that knowledge on the physical health, plus now the mental health and nervous system, really sets me apart from other coaches when it comes to nervous system work. Because nervous system, I didn't know this. Maybe you don't know this. Nervous system determines everything in our life. Where are we going to live? Who we're going to be with, who our friends are going to be, what are we going to allow in our life, if we're going to move or not, if we're going to have a job or a business, how much we're going to earn. Literally everything comes down to our nervous system that doesn't have logic. So we logically know what we want, but if the nervous system is not ready, we're never going to get there. And to me, that was just so life transforming. Once I got that and once I learned how to work with nervous system and then I learned to share that with my clients, it was like, whoa, this is the root cause of everything.
I remember hearing a stat that our spinal column has the same amount of electrical power as a bolt of lightning.
It's insane. When you start learning about the body and what's actually happening through the body and then pineal gland and the electricity through and then it's just it never ends. The reading and the research never ends, but it kind of helps. Like as I'm learning about this, I'm like, it's as if I kind of knew this. It's
Yeah.
kind of like this remembering, but it's now like, oh, this is why that didn't work out. Oh, this is how much power we have. And it's in a way frightening to how powerful we really are.
It's just like a whole endless line of dominoes, and there's all these lines that go everywhere. And if you click one, it will just lead to one very tiny part of your body, whether it's nervous system, whether it's the hippocampus, whether it's the thyroid, whether it's the way your heart pumps, like all of these things. And then all of those dominoes that fall affect everything else that's corollary. It's wild. I mean, it's
Yes.
when you think about the intricacies of our body, which kind of mimics the outside world, you got to wonder how there isn't more chaos potentially.
Actually, completely so. And when I had a dysregulated nervous system, and now that I feel more calm and I see it the other way, I see how many people are living like that. And I feel the same way. I'm like, whoa, we're actually doing pretty good with considering with where we are. Absolutely.
Well, I would think that after the pandemic too, there's kind of this heightened sense of self and where we're going and how we're living our lives. And just kind of there was that proverbial fork in the road that was like, what are you going to do with this time? Because we all had to be very reflective. It was the big mirror moment for all of us. So I'd imagine there would have been more clientele and there would be deeper and richer interactions.
There's definitely a split, and I think we've all seen the split in how people think. And Dolores Cannon, who was a psychoanalyst, I believe she was, and she wrote books. And I remember watching a few interviews about her, and she said that the earth is splitting into two, the high energy and then the lower energy, and it's kind of like that. I see now more and more people who are questioning, right? Like my parents never questioned. My parents were like, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a job, and that's it. And I was like, it's just doesn't seem like, what is that? That's not colorful at all. It doesn't seem enough. And newer generations keep asking and exploring and going deeper into it. So there's definitely a movement in the right direction. But then also another person I listened to, Eckhart Tolle, talked about that. He said when we go too much in one way, we have to kind of pen the swindle and go into the other way.
Yeah.
And till we find the middle. And you do see that too. We went too much in the masculine, hardworking, hardcore wars energy. Some of it is still there, but we're now switching into more, let's try another way. Let's go into connection. We've been missing connection for a long time. And now we're just kind of trying to find that middle ground for everyone. And of course, everybody's different, but
Yeah.
I love that people are asking themselves these questions.
Yeah.
That's the key.
That is the key. So let me ask you this. Who has been that inspiration, that heroic force for you in your life to find your profession, to find your voice, and to find who you are?
Well, now is my son, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Before I had him, it was me. It was just these never enoughness, right? Like not the I'm not satisfied with what I have. It's there has to be more to life than this. I remember being so depressed, like hating my life in my 20s. I remember thinking, I was never really suicidal that I can remember, but I remember thinking, death has to be easier than this. Like I hated my life. But it was always this other thing inside going, this can be it. There's no way that this is it. There's no way that I was given this gift called life to hate it this bad. And I think that's what first started my whole question and research. And now my son is my North Star. I mean, everything I do, I'm like, I want you to understand this in your nervous system so you don't have to learn it like we're learning it as adults.
So when you decided to become a coach, was there a client, was there a seminal moment that confirmed that you made the right choice? Did you have something like that happen?
I had that uncovered for me when I had the fitness studio. I would do surveys on my clients as to why they chose my location because there were a ton of other workout fitness guru places around my studio, and I would always question like why did you come here? Like what is it about this place? Because I wanted to know what I can do more of, right? What we're good at. And they would say, "Well, you care." And at first I was like, what do you mean? I'm supposed to care. I'm your trainer." And they were like, "Well, that's not our experience in other places." And when someone tells you about your gift at first, you're like, well, that's not even a gift. That's what I do. Like that's normal. But then I started like again, keep doing the surveys, and I would get very similar answers. And I thought, okay, there's depth to this. I obviously care more than just an average trainer. And then that kind of continued on with my coaching. And again, when I was a trainer, I would get injured and think, okay, well, this helps me understand the person that come into my studio. When I would battle, weight, I would say, okay, well, now I understand what they're going through. And it's the same thing now. Like I said, the feeling stuck in my life in the past and not hating my life and all of that actually contributed to me understanding people on a deeper level. So when they come to me and they're stuck, I know exactly how they're thinking, I know how they're feeling, and I know how to get them out of there.
So, if you could meet one person on the planet right now that you find fascinating, that is either doing your work or something along the same lines, or anybody that might help you on your journey, who would you love to meet and talk to a little bit?
So I did meet him and I did a little bit of group coaching under him, but I never had one-on-one time with him. His name is John Assaraf. The first time that people generally heard of him was from The Secret,
Hmm.
but he is a phenomenal human being. He is very much into meditation, quantum physics, as well as business strategy. And every time I've listened to him, it's just calming and full of knowledge, and I always learn something new.
So, what gets you up every day to do this work? You obviously have to get involved with people's lives that can be complicated, complex. There can be some dark things. How do you protect yourself, do the best job you can, and also nurture and take care of your own soul?
So we have this term empath, right? And most people think they're born empaths, but most people are not. Most of us became empaths because we had to learn to read other people's emotions before they even realized what they were in order to feel safe when we were little. This is how it all pretty much began. So when I was little, I started doing that. I didn't obviously know it at the time. I know it now. So it really helped me, yes, feel people's emotions and really take them on.
Yeah.
I watched that destroy my mother. She was the same way. She wasn't really into this kind of work, but she died at 61 officially from breast cancer, but I know that that was trauma that she never worked through because I know enough about her past. And watching that really opened my eyes to say, okay, I want to be there for people how she was, but I am not doing this. Because she would be there for people in good times and in bad times. And she helped a lot of people going through really hard times, but she took that on. And I do believe that that created breast cancer, the cancer. And that was a big one for me, just that decision. Like, I want to be there for people. I really like that I have the ability to feel. But again, even as a trainer, I would get sympathy pains at times. And I was like, all right, we're not doing this. So this person
Yeah.
has a knee pain. Now I have a knee pain. This person has a shoulder pain. Now I have a shoulder pain. Here I am with 15 different pains.
Yeah.
So I really had to work my way through it to learn how I can be there and empathize with a person, but not take on that pain. I also, of course, take time for myself. I meditate a few times a day. I exercise. I do all the things right. Like I spend time in nature. I'm really highly aware of my own behavior and my energy. And my son, who is also a highly sensitive kid, if I'm not in that energy, he'll show it right away through his behavior and his emotions. And I go, all right, I need to turn this around. Because energy, we know from physics, can only be transformed from one form to the other. So
Yeah.
that's basically what I do is I've learned to transform it within myself.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you, ready to go out into the world, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart, and would that version of you listen?
It is so crazy that you're asking me these questions, and here's why. Recently, well, actually, not so recently, a few years ago, I heard of memory remapping, and my ego at the time went, no, I'm not remembering anything differently from how it was. I want to remember it. That was ego. So, fast forward to now, I'm really doing a lot of deeper work where I have removed pretty much ego as I can think I have removed. And
Yeah.
I've been memory remapping, which requires me to go into some of my memories, remember them, and then change them. As I wanted to do this, I went back to the 18-year version of myself just 2 nights ago. I started doing
Wow.
this 2 nights ago, and it's
Wild.
crazy that you're asking me this question.
Yeah.
So she would not listen at first. And I had that in my vision. She would not. She felt so lonely. She felt so alone. Again, that was the time when I started thinking death has to be easier than this, but I have this life sentence I have to live first. But I got her to listen. And in the memory remapping, I told her, you're not alone. I'm here for you. And there will be many people that show up there for you. What's interesting about memories is you will only remember things generally that go along with your story. And what I mean by that is, I moved to the US at 16. My parents were still in Eastern Europe. I felt very alone and very lonely for a really long time. And for a long time, my story was I felt rejected by my parents, who actually, decided that it's better for me to stay in the United States as opposed to coming back to Europe, which really was a better decision. But my story of an 18-year-old shut down heart was I felt rejected by my parents. I took that story with me for the next 20 years, if so, or more. So I was doing a meditation memory remapping. Actually, I was going to memory map. I went into, it wasn't even a meditation. I just sat down and closed my eyes. And I said, I want to feel loved. And that was the intention. So many memories came up of my parents loving me that I realized because my story changed, the memories were able to open up. And I realized my parents actually sacrificed a lot. My mom allowed herself to have her heart broken and not be around her daughter so that I can have a better life.
Yeah.
And that completely changed my story on, whoa, like how we remember things actually has a lot to do with how we want to remember things and what our story is. So for as long as we're open to change these stories or maybe explore what was on the other side, how did the other person feel in that moment, it can actually change everything and heal almost instantly.
I remember that movie Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Brain with Jim Carrey, where,
Yes.
it's that idea of remapping your synapses to feel certain ways and get rid of things. But it seems like the best therapeutic scientific way to do that is to address the root issue. And in that healing, you can kind of rework the narrative for yourself.
Yes. So interestingly, in that movie, they actually completely erased it.
Yeah.
What we do is we now in memory remapping, it's not that I forget the other
Yeah.
story, it's that I attach better emotions to it. So it doesn't have that effect on me anymore. So like but also my story about my parents completely changed. I can't speak anymore and say, oh, my parents rejected me. I was alone, which was my, like, I was 100% with that story for a long time because now I see the other side and that's the power of it. It's not that my emotions were invalid, it's that I saw it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so there are always many perspectives, but as long as we can remove the ego enough to say, what is the other perspective in that, we can really, really work to heal.
So let's say you walked into a room of all of your clients that you've worked with throughout the years, and you could go to a podium in front of that room and tell them a fun story about your life. Maybe the first concert that you went to, the feeling of being in America the first time, the feeling of moving back to Europe, some kind of story, fun story, or a story about you that would help them see you in a more human light. What would be a story you would tell that room?
I would probably share the story about how I thought that death has to be easier than life, and I have this life sentence. Because I think that many people go through times when they're hating their life, or they're like, how did I get here? They feel like they're not living in the truth. And I would probably share that story the most, because I want them to know that I know what it's like to hit the rock bottom, but I also know what it's like on the other side. And I would love for everyone to experience how good it is on the other side.
So, of everything that you've done, accomplished, and more importantly, evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
My son,
Yeah,
my boy, he is the love of my life. I never wanted kids. And
yeah,
that was because of a dysregulated nervous system.
yeah.
I was the survivor, right? Like I was a soldier. That was my story. I have to survive in the United States. And I never wanted kids. I didn't think I was going to enjoy motherhood. That's really what it was. I remember a person saying to me about him and his wife, he said, we didn't have kids till we decided we wanted to be parents. Not that we wanted to have kids, but that we wanted to be parents. And that sentence stayed with me like forever. And fast forward, when I moved back to Europe, I actually reconnected with my high school sweetheart. So we didn't see each other for 20 years. And we started a relationship again. And I wanted to start a family. And I never knew how that's going to change me. He makes me want to be a better person. Like I always knew I wanted to be better every day,
Yeah.
but seeing that my heart walking outside of me, having that as my little experiment, as I call him, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm parenting him differently than I was parented.
Sure.
That's definitely my love and my pride.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that works with you, that knows you, but you're the one that's driving the bus. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
A chameleon. Like it's so hard to say that, because who I am today is so not who I was 10 years ago, and is hopefully nowhere near who I'm going to be in 10 years. There's a saying, if you're not embarrassed of who you were 10 years ago, you're not growing fast enough. And I'm thinking, I can just remember who I was 2 years ago. And I have to say chameleon, because just like I had that moment with memories of like, wait, my story was this, and now I see this reality. I feel the same way about everything. I always tell people, like, you're watching my video right now, you can quote me on that date, but
Yep.
I don't know if you're watching this 3 years later if I'm gonna hold the same opinion or not. So definitely a chameleon.
Yeah.
People who knew me from fitness days don't know me now. I'm a completely different person.
So what do you love the best about being back in Eastern Europe, and what do you miss about America?
Oh, I miss a lot of stuff. Uh, I did. We moved to Panama for a while. I knew I wanted to travel more, so we did move to Panama, where there's a lot of Americans and Canadians, and I thought, okay, it's Americanized enough for me. But that actually made me realize there's like it's pretty much the same everywhere except the US. The things I miss from the US is space. Europe is built on so small, so
Yeah.
such small things. So I miss space. I miss having a washer and a dryer of a good size. um, I was, because I moved at 16, I was very Americanized. So this is why my business is mainly I mean, mostly in the US now. I work with, US marketing is on my mind. I know how US people in the US think. That's who I am.
Yeah.
What was challenging is I had a complete reverse culture shock when I moved back here, and I don't know if we're going to stay here. We're here for now. It's not that we're always searching for something better. It's not the high anymore, but I believe that I was led back here to heal the parts of me that I couldn't heal in the United States. Because when I came back, what was interesting is I started seeing myself with my dad. At the time I lived with him for a moment, and I remember acting as a 16-year-old, and I remember thinking, why am I acting like a 16-year-old, and why is he acting like I'm 16? Well, I
Yeah.
left when I was 16. So there were a lot of things that I had to work through. If we're going to stay here, what I miss about the US is the efficiency. The efficiency of the United States of America cannot be beat. When I go to a bank, I don't even have to go to a bank. I can do everything via an app, right?
Yeah.
Where in Europe it's different. Sometimes you got to stand in line at the bank and, I compare time because everything is in time, right?
Yes.
So I go, okay, I just wasted 2 hours of my time here that I would have in States. And so I started challenging myself on things that I can do. Like I'll take my Kindle places and read while I'm waiting in line, or I'll take my kid and we can play a game while we're. So I'm doing my best to be more efficient, but I literally had to adjust my expectations because dealing with anything here, I mean, dealing with UPS here is already a story of its own. It took us
Yes.
3 months to get my kids
Wow.
Kindle here, and that knowing how efficient it could be is the hardest part about
Yeah.
adjusting to a slower paced life. But
Wow.
there's something to be said about a slower paced life too. So
Yeah.
it's kind of those
Yep.
like where's the happy in between,
Yep. Yep. The Libratic scale. So if anyone wants to reach out, they have questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
My website is leks.pro. That's leks.pro. And my name is spelled Leks, which is pretty unique. As long as you Google Leks Vucko, I
Yeah.
come up. I do have a free workshop, and I would love to offer your listeners a free gift. That would be a self discovery call. This is not a sales call. This was designed for my clients as an onboarding call, and I do charge for it right now, but I would love to offer it as a free gift for anyone who's interested. What we do is we meet, I ask about 5 questions in different areas of your life, and then you leave knowing exactly where you're stuck and why you're stuck, and it's usually not where you think it is. And then
Yeah.
at that point, you're free to go, or you can, ask about the course or coaching and we can go from there. But this is not a pushy sales call. This is for the person to really discover where they're stuck. Because if I had that when I was 18,
Yep.
that would probably be a completely different trajectory of my life.
Absolutely. Well, I will put all of this in the show notes. What a joy. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time and best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a
Yes.
great day.
Thank you.